The cosmic joy researchers concluded human happiness is contagious across all species. Part 1. Doctor had studied emotions for 300 years. In that time, the tall, crystalline being had mapped the feelings of 247 different species across the galaxy. Joy, sadness, anger, fear. Every intelligent race felt something, though never quite the same way. The Sown people experienced satisfaction as a cool, logical state. When they accomplished something, their crystalline bodies would hum at a specific frequency. It was pleasant but controlled. They glowed softly when content, their bioluminescent skin pulsing with warm orange light. A warrior race that valued discipline above all else felt brief sparks of pleasure that faded almost immediately. Even the hive-minded experienced a collective sense of achievement, though no individual node could claim the feeling as its own. This was normal, this was understood, this was how the galaxy worked. Then humanity made first contact, and everything thought he knew began to crack like thin ice. The research station orbiting Earth was the largest facility in this sector of space. It housed over 3,000 researchers, diplomats, and support staff from dozens of species. Its primary ring rotated slowly, creating artificial gravity for those species that needed it. Stood in the main observation deck, watching the blue and green planet below with careful scientific interest. The humans were coming today. The first official delegation would board the station within the hour. "Are the sensors calibrated?" asked his assistant, a young named. "Yes, doctor. All emotional monitoring equipment is functioning at optimal levels." His voice carried the flat, precise tone of their species. "Though I must ask, why such extensive preparation? We've studied hundreds of species. Surely humans can't be that different." His crystalline form flickered slightly, the equivalent of a shrug. The preliminary scans from the probe teams showed unusual patterns. Their emotional responses are more volatile than most species. Stronger peaks, deeper valleys. I want to ensure we capture everything accurately. What didn't mention was the strange note in those preliminary reports. 3 different probe teams had commented on feeling oddly affected after extended contact with humans. One observer had described experiencing a prolonged positive state that shouldn't have been physiologically possible. The reports were vague, almost embarrassed in tone, as if the researchers didn't quite believe their own data. The docking bay doors opened with a soft hiss, and a delegation of researchers gathered near the entrance, sensors active and recording. Standard protocol for first contact with a new species required observation from the very first moment. The first human through the door was a woman with dark hair pulled back in a practical style. She wore a blue uniform with various patches and symbols. Her brown eyes scanned the crowd of aliens with obvious curiosity and something else, something bright and eager that made sensors spike unexpectedly. "Hello," the woman said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation device. "I'm Dr. Sarah and part of Earth's first diplomatic team. It's an incredible honor to meet all of you." Behind her came a tall man with dark skin and a wide smile. Astronaut and pilot. And let me just say, he looked around at the massive station, at the diverse collection of alien species staring at him. "This is the coolest thing that has ever happened to anyone ever." The third human, a smaller person with light skin and dark hair, bowed slightly. "Linguistics specialist. We're very excited to be here." Excited. That was the word that kept appearing in the translation. Noted it carefully. Excitement was a heightened emotional state, anticipation mixed with joy, reasonable for a first contact situation. What wasn't reasonable was what happened next. A security officer standing near the door suddenly brightened. His bioluminescent skin, which had been its usual dim amber, flared to a brilliant gold. He looked down at himself in confusion, touching his own arm as if it belonged to someone else. "Is something wrong?" Sarah asked, concern crossing her face. I don't know," he said slowly. "I feel Very positive, more than usual. I was just standing here and then you walked in and... He trailed off, clearly bewildered. Sensors were going wild. Emotional contagion existed. It was documented in several species. But it was typically limited to members of the same species and required specific conditions. What was seeing now made no sense. This biochemistry had changed simply from being near the humans. "Doctor, are you seeing this?" whispered, holding up a data pad. The administrator near the back just registered sustained positive emotion. That's not supposed to be possible for their species. Was about to respond when laughed. It was a loud, uninhibited sound that echoed through the docking bay. The translator had made an error, mixing up the human words for dock and sock, suggesting they had arrived at a sock bay. Found this absurdly funny. The laugh was like dropping a stone in still water. Ripples spread outward. A warrior's mandibles twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. Two nodes, standing near each other, began vibrating at an unusual frequency. Even felt something strange, a warming sensation in his crystalline core that shouldn't be possible. His species didn't feel warmth emotionally. They didn't feel much of anything except cool satisfaction or cool disappointment. Yet here he was, feeling unmistakably warm inside. "I apologize," said, though she was also smiling. "Has a terrible sense of humor. We've been dealing with it for the entire trip." "Hey, you laughed at my jokes all the way from Earth," protested. "That was pity," replied, but her tone was affectionate. Sarah rolled her eyes in a gesture that translated clearly across species barriers. "Please excuse them. They're always like this. We promise we're also very professional when we need to be." The formal welcome ceremony should have been a standard affair. Speeches, introductions, exchange of symbolic gifts. But something kept happening. The humans would react to something, a mistranslation, an awkward moment, even just the strangeness of the situation, and their emotions would ripple outward like waves. When made a self-deprecating joke about nearly tripping during his entrance, half the room's inhabitants found themselves feeling lighter, as if their own embarrassments mattered less. When Sarah expressed genuine awe at seeing so many different species in one place, the assembled aliens found themselves seeing their own diversity with fresh appreciation. When quietly commented that this moment represented humanity's dream of centuries, even the most stoic in the room felt a flutter of something profound. By the end of the ceremony, sensors had collected more anomalous data than in his previous 50 years of research combined. He excused himself and retreated to his laboratory, following close behind. "This is impossible," said, staring at the readouts. "The data must be corrupted." But was already running diagnostics. Every system checked out perfectly. The data was clean, accurate, and completely unprecedented. "It's not corruption," said slowly. "It's real. Somehow human emotions are affecting other species. Not through pheromones, we scan for that. Not through any known biological mechanism. But it's happening. What do we do?" Thought for a long moment, watching the graphs spike and flow on his screens. Each spike represented an emotional response that shouldn't exist. Warriors feeling sustained joy, experiencing brightness they'd never known. Even, cold and logical by nature, warming from within. "We do what researchers do," finally said. "We study it. We understand it. Because if human happiness really is contagious across all species..." He paused, watching one particular graph that showed his own emotional state during the ceremony. The line climbed higher than it had in decades. "Then we may be witnessing the most important discovery in galactic history." He initiated Protocol 7 with a few quick commands. Deep emotional study, reserved for only the most unprecedented findings. The system accepted his credentials and activated. A message appeared on the screen. "Request human cooperation for extended observation." His hand, crystalline and usually steady, hesitated over the confirmation button. Something told him that once he pressed it, once he truly began to study what made humans different, there would be no going back. The galaxy would change. Perhaps it already had, the moment those three humans walked through the door with their laughter and their excitement and their strange, infectious joy. He pressed the button. In the station's guest quarters, Sarah sat on an alien bed that adjusted itself to her shape and smiled at the ceiling. Was in the next room, already making friends with a confused who couldn't understand why he suddenly wanted to tell jokes. Was carefully documenting every first impression, her scientific mind cataloging this historic moment. They had no idea they were the subjects of intense study. No idea that their simple, human happiness was sending shockwaves through centuries of galactic understanding. They were just happy to be here, meeting aliens, exploring the stars, living the dream that humans had chased since they first looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. That happiness, pure and unguarded and completely natural, was already spreading through the station like light through darkness. And tomorrow, the real experiments would begin. Part 2. The experiment started small. That was Sway, careful, methodical, scientific. On the second day, he asked the human delegation to simply exist in different areas of the station, while sensors tracked emotional responses in nearby aliens. Sarah spent the morning in the botanical research wing, examining alien plants with obvious fascination. Within 20 minutes, the three researchers working there began exhibiting unusual behavior. Normally, the hive-minded species worked in perfect synchronization, each node contributing to a collective consciousness. But as Sarah examined a phosphorescent fern and exclaimed with delight, one of the nodes stopped. It just stopped working and watched her instead. "This is remarkable," Sarah said, not noticing the alien's attention. "The way these fronds collect light particles, we have nothing like this on Earth. May I take some readings?" The node moved closer. "Yes," it said, and the other two nodes turned to look at it in surprise. They didn't use singular pronouns. They didn't have individuals. Yet this node had just said yes, as if it were making a personal choice. Noted this carefully from the observation room. Stood beside him, their crystalline form practically vibrating with scientific excitement. Another unusual display of emotion for a. "The hive structure is fragmenting," said, checking the readings. "Look at the neural patterns. That node is experiencing something independent of the collective." "What is it experiencing?" "I think," paused, recalibrating the sensors. "I think it's curious, individually curious. It wants to know what Sarah thinks about the plants, not what the collective knows about them. Doctor, this shouldn't be possible." In the station's recreation area had gathered a small crowd. He'd brought a deck of cards from Earth and was attempting to teach a card game to anyone interested. His audience was unusual, a warrior named or two, and a young engineer. "Okay, so the goal is to get rid of all your cards," explained, dealing them out. "You match either the color or the number, and if someone plays this card," he held up a colorful rectangle, "you have to draw 2 cards, got it?" Or's warrior training had taught him to analyze tactical situations instantly, but this wasn't combat. This was play. His species had no word for play. "What is the purpose?" Or asked. "If I win, what do I gain?" Grinned, "The deep satisfaction of beating me at my own game. Trust me, it's worth it." They played 3 rounds, or won the second one through sheer tactical thinking. Wen threw down his cards in mock defeat and said, "No way, you destroyed me." Something happened in Or's chest. It was warm, it was light. It made him want to make a sound he'd never made before, something between a huff and a click that sounded almost like laughter. "Again," Or said, and he realized he was eager. Eager. A warrior, eager to play a game that meant nothing, won nothing, achieved nothing except this strange, pleasant feeling. They were glowing brighter than had ever seen their species glow. The engineer kept making small humming sounds, adjusting their frequency with each hand of cards as if testing out different emotions. Took a different approach. She set up a small area in one of the station's common spaces and began teaching origami to anyone who stopped by. The ancient art of paper folding attracted attention quickly. A cluster, 3 nodes working together, attempted to fold a crane under gentle instruction. The paper was foreign to them. The concept of creating something purely decorative was foreign to them, but's calm voice and encouraging words made them want to try. Like this, demonstrated, her fingers precise. Mountain fold, then valley fold. Don't worry if it's not perfect. The trying is what matters. One of the nodes struggled with a complicated fold. The paper crumpled slightly. In the hive mind, this would have been a collective failure, quickly corrected by another node. But smiled at the struggling node. That's okay. My first crane looked like a disaster. Want to know a secret? Sometimes the imperfect ones are my favorites. They have character. The node looked at its crumpled paper crane. Character. A flaw that was somehow valuable. The concept rippled through the 3-node cluster, and for a moment, each node felt something separate. Pride. Individual pride in individual effort. The breakthrough moment came during the 3rd week. Had convinced the humans to participate in more structured testing, though he'd been careful to frame it as cultural exchange rather than experimentation. Sarah had agreed enthusiastically. "We want to understand you better too," she'd said. "This works both ways, right?" That afternoon introduced game night to the station. He'd sent a message to the humans back on Earth requesting more games, and they'd sent up a treasure trove. Board games, card games, simple sports equipment, even a small speaker that played music. The recreation area filled up quickly. Word had spread through the station that the humans were doing something called having fun. And while many species understood the concept theoretically, few had experienced it the way humans apparently did. Watched from the observation deck with, and several other researchers. The sensors covering the recreation area were running at maximum capacity. Taught a group how to play charades. The concept was simple: act out a word or phrase without speaking while your team tried to guess. But watching it in practice was extraordinary. A dignified diplomat found herself flailing her arms trying to indicate flying, while her partner, a stoic officer, shouted increasingly absurd guesses. When they finally got it right, both of them made sounds that could only be described as squeals of victory. Sarah organized a simple relay race, just running back and forth carrying a bean bag. Species who had never engaged in physical activity for pleasure found themselves sprinting and laughing, competing for nothing but the joy of competing. Sat in a corner with a mixed group, teaching them simple songs in different Earth languages. With a voice like crystal chimes attempted a Japanese folk song. It was off-key and the pronunciation was terrible, but when clapped encouragement, this entire body glowed with warmth from within, something had never seen in his species. Then did something that made sensors spike wildly. His assistant stood up from the observation deck and walked down to the recreation area, approached the charades group and spoke quietly too. May I try?" His face split into a huge grin. "Absolutely, come on, you're on my team." Watched frozen as his assistant played a human game, drew a card swimming and began making awkward motions with their crystalline arms. The team shouted guesses. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Then said swimming, and his entire body resonated with a frequency had never heard before. His assistant was experiencing pure, uncontrolled joy. Experiencing joy. The medical bay reported unusual activity that evening. Doctor, the station's chief medical officer, contacted with confusion in her voice. "I'm seeing readings I don't understand," the doctor said. "Stress hormones down across multiple species. Social bonding chemicals elevated. We've had 3 officers come in convinced something is wrong with them because they keep wanting to smile. And 2 nodes just requested separate quarters. Separate. They want to be individuals." "It's the humans," said quietly. I know it's the humans, but what are they doing? Is this some kind of biological warfare, an invasion tactic? Looked at the data streaming across his screens. Every graph showed the same thing, happiness spreading like wildfire through the station. No, I don't think they're doing anything deliberate. I think they're just being themselves. That night, unable to settle into his usual meditative state, went for a walk through the station. He passed the recreation area and heard laughter still echoing from within. He passed the residential wings and saw mixed species groups sitting together, talking, some of them sharing food. He found in the botanical wing, sitting next to Sarah. They were looking at the phosphorescent ferns together, and Sarah was explaining something about photosynthesis on Earth, was listening with an intensity that went beyond scientific interest. Doctor said, noticing, Sarah was just telling me about her daughter. Did you know humans have a tradition of teaching their children to find shapes in clouds? They look at something random and find meaning in it together, just for fun. Just for fun, repeated. Sarah smiled at him. Is something wrong? You look. Well, I'm not sure how to read expressions yet, but you seem troubled. I am processing, said carefully. Doctor, do you know what you're doing to this station? Making friends, I hope. You're making everyone happy. Genuinely, measurably happy. Species that have never experienced sustained positive emotion are laughing, playing games, wanting to be individuals. You're changing everyone you meet. Sarah's expression grew thoughtful. I suppose we are pretty enthusiastic, but isn't that a good thing? Everyone seems to be enjoying themselves. That's what troubles me, admitted. It is good, measurably good for their health and mental state, but it's also unprecedented and unexplained. How are you doing this? Sarah looked at, then back at. She shrugged, a very human gesture. I don't know, we're just being people, humans. We laugh because things are funny. We play games because they're fun. We share stories because we want to connect. Is that really so unusual? In the galaxy, said, apparently yes. Later in his laboratory, began composing his preliminary report to the Concordance Council. His hands moved slowly over the keyboard, choosing each word with care. Subject, urgent findings regarding human emotional influence. After 3 weeks of observation, I can confirm that human emotional states have a measurable effect on all species tested. The mechanism remains unclear, but the impact is undeniable. When humans experience happiness, those near them experience corresponding positive emotional shifts, regardless of species biology. More significantly, humans appear to have developed countless methods for generating and sharing happiness. They call these methods games, music, stories, humor, art, celebration. These are not biological tools but cultural ones, learned behaviors passed down through generations, refined over. Implications. If human happiness is truly contagious across all species, this represents the most significant emotional discovery in Concordance history. Further study is urgently required. He paused before adding the final line. Recommendation. Protocol 7 to continue indefinitely. Possible consideration of first contact reclassification. The last designation made his crystalline form flicker with something almost like anxiety. First contact reclassification was reserved for species that posed a fundamental challenge to galactic understanding, species that would change everything. From the recreation area, 3 levels down, the sound of human laughter drifted through the ventilation system. With it came the sounds of dozens of other species, learning to laugh along. Sent the report and hoped the council would understand. Humanity hadn't brought advanced weapons or miraculous technology to the stars. They'd brought something far more dangerous and far more powerful. They'd brought joy, and it was spreading. Part 3. The report reached the Concordance Council within hours. The response came within days. Stood in the station's primary communication chamber, his crystalline form reflecting the holographic projections of 5 council members. Each represented a major galactic power. Supreme Arbiter Eth of the spoke first, his mandibles clicking with authority. "Doctor, your report is concerning. You claim humans are emotionally affecting other species through unknown means. This requires immediate investigation and possible quarantine protocols." "With respect, Arbiter, I don't recommend quarantine," said carefully. "The effects are entirely positive. No species has shown any negative reactions. In fact—" "That is precisely what concerns me," Eth interrupted. "An effect this powerful, this universal, and this inexplicable could be a form of biological manipulation. Perhaps humans don't even know they're doing it. Perhaps it's an evolutionary adaptation for subjugating other species." A council member, Elder In, brightened slightly in disagreement. "That seems unlikely. Our diplomatic teams on Earth report that humans are affecting each other the same way. This isn't targeted at us. It's simply how they exist." "Which makes it worse," a representative said. "It's 3 nodes speaking in harmony. If humans cannot control this effect, how do we protect our species' integrity? We've already received reports of individual nodes seeking separation from their collectives. This threatens our very nature." The debate continued for over an hour, presented data, answered questions, and watched as the council grew increasingly divided. Some saw opportunity, others saw threat, but all agreed on one thing: humanity was unlike anything they'd encountered before. Finally, Eth made a decision. "Doctor, you will continue your studies, but under restricted conditions. The human delegation is to be confined to the research station. No other humans may leave Earth until we understand this phenomenon fully, and you will investigate whether this effect can be neutralized or controlled." The holographic projections faded, stood alone in the chamber, feeling something unpleasant in his core. Guilt, perhaps, or shame. The humans had done nothing wrong, yet he was being ordered to treat them like a containment problem. But word of the Council's restrictions had already leaked. By the time left the communication chamber, the damage was spreading through the galactic network faster than any virus. Species from dozens of worlds were demanding access to humanity, not for their resources, not for their territory, but for this joy contagion. Diplomatic channels flooded with requests. Some planets offered technology, trade agreements, entire systems in exchange for human ambassadors. Others simply begged. The home world sent a message that shook deeply. It came from the Council of Elders, the highest authority of his people. "We have maintained logical perfection for 10,000 years. We have eliminated wasteful emotion and achieved pure rational thought. But reports from the research station suggest we may have eliminated something we didn't know we needed. Request immediate human delegation to Prime for evaluation." His own people, the proudest, most emotionally disciplined species in the galaxy, were asking humans to teach them how to feel. On the research station, Sarah sat in an emergency meeting with End. An administrator had just informed them of their restricted status. "So we're prisoners?" asked, his usual cheerfulness gone. "Not prisoners," the administrator said uncomfortably. "Protected guests, for your safety and ours." "That's politics speak for prisoners," muttered. Sarah looked tired. "We knew this might happen. We're changing things too fast. They're scared." "Scared of happiness," said quietly. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." The news spread through the station quickly. The reaction was immediate and unexpected. An officer named, or the same one who had learned to play cards, approached the human quarters and stood guard outside. When asked what he was doing, he simply said, "They're my friends. I protect my friends." Within hours, dozens of aliens had gathered outside the human quarters, not to keep them in, but to keep anyone from forcing them out, glowing with determination. Nodes acting independently in solidarity, even humming at frequencies that indicated distress. found in his laboratory late that night. "Doctor, I need to speak with you." Looked up from his data screens. His assistant's crystalline form was humming at an unusual frequency, something almost like anger. "The Council is wrong," said bluntly. "The humans aren't a threat, they're a gift." "That's not a scientific assessment." "Then let me give you a scientific assessment." Pulled up data on the main screen. "I've been studying the long-term effects on station residents. Productivity is up. Conflict resolution is faster. Medical issues related to stress are down by 40%. And do you want to know the most significant change? Weighted. Suicide ideation has dropped to zero across all species. We had 3 cases per month on this station before the humans arrived. In 6 weeks, we've had none. Because for the first time in their lives, people have something to look forward to besides duty and obligation. They have joy." Moved closer, their voice dropping. "Doctor, I have to tell you something. Before Sarah taught me origami, before I played that game of charades, I was empty. I didn't know I was empty because I'd never been anything else. Don't feel, we calculate. We exist efficiently. But now I know what I was missing and I can't go back. I won't." The humans showed me that efficiency isn't the same as living. Logic isn't the same as meaning. And if the Council tries to take that away from me, from all of us, then the Council is wrong and needs to be opposed. Looked at his assistant, really looked. Was glowing from within, crystalline structure refracting light in patterns weren't supposed to create. His assistant had changed. Not corrupted, not manipulated, but genuinely transformed into something more than they had been. "What do you suggest we do?" asked quietly. "Present the complete truth to the Council. Not just the data, but what it means. Make them understand." 3 days later, requested an emergency session with the full Concordance Council. This time, he brought witnesses. The council chamber was massive, designed to hold representatives from hundreds of worlds. Today, it was packed. News of the human situation had drawn attention from across the galaxy. Stood at the central podium, the 3 humans beside him, with and dozens of other station residents in the gallery. Supreme Arbiter Eth called the session to order. "Doctor, you requested this emergency session. Speak." "Honored Council, I have completed my analysis of human emotional influence. I was asked to investigate whether it could be neutralized or controlled." Paused. "I can answer definitively. Yes, it can be neutralized. Complete isolation from humans would prevent the effect, but that would be the greatest mistake in Concordance history." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Eth's mandibles clicked sharply. "Explain." "Human happiness isn't contagious because of biology or chemistry. It's contagious because humans have spent their entire evolution developing methods to create and share joy. Every human culture has music, games, stories, art, humor, celebration. These aren't random developments, they're survival tools. Humans evolved on a difficult world, facing danger and hardship. They learned that happiness wasn't just pleasant, it was necessary. So they built it, cultivated it, and shared it." Pulled up images on the chamber's main display. When humans tell stories, they're teaching empathy. When they play games, they're building community. When they create art, they're finding meaning. And when they laugh together, they're reinforcing bonds that help them survive. "This is all fascinating anthropology," Eth said impatiently, "but it doesn't address the concern. Humans are changing other species, altering how we think and feel." "Yes," agreed. "They are, but not through force or manipulation, through example, and we have the choice to learn from that example or reject it." He gestured to the gallery. "I've brought witnesses, people who have been affected by human presence. Listen to them before you decide." Or the warrior spoke first. His voice was strong but careful. "My species values strength, discipline, honor. We do not waste time on frivolous pursuits, but taught me to play a card game, and for the first time in my life, I understood why we fight. Not for duty, but to protect moments of peace where people can laugh over cards. I am a better warrior now because I know what joy feels like. A scientist spoke next. My research productivity has increased 30% since the humans arrived, not because I work harder, but because I want to share my findings. Sarah taught me that discovery isn't just about knowledge, it's about the excitement of showing someone else what you've learned. Science became joyful. One of the nodes that had individualized stepped forward. I was part of a hive. I knew only collective consciousness, then taught me to fold paper, and I made something that was mine alone. The hive called me broken, but I'm not broken. I'm whole in a way I never was before. I am me. Testimony after testimony, species after species, each one describing not loss but gain, not corruption but transformation. Finally stood. The young's voice resonated through the chamber with unusual emotion. This council represents hundreds of species, thousands of worlds. We have achieved peace, stability, order. But in pursuing efficiency, we forgot something essential. We forgot how to be happy. Its crystalline form glowed brightly. The humans didn't infect us with anything. They reminded us that life isn't just about existing efficiently, it's about existing meaningfully. And if this council chooses to quarantine humanity, to deny the galaxy this gift, then we're choosing fear over hope, safety over growth, existence over living. The chamber erupted in discussion. Council members argued, debated, and for the first time in Concordance history, showed genuine emotional investment in their decision. Supreme Arbiter Eth called for silence. The massive stood, his warrior bearing impossible to miss. For a long moment he simply stared at the humans. Then he looked at, "You've studied emotions for 3 centuries, Doctor. In your professional opinion, is human happiness dangerous?" "Yes," said honestly. "It's dangerous to the status, to emotional isolation, to the belief that efficiency and logic are enough. But dangerous isn't the same as harmful. Sometimes the most dangerous thing is also the most necessary." Eth's mandibles clicked slowly, a sign of deep thought. We do not feel sustained happiness. It is not in our nature. But 3 weeks ago, a human taught me what a joke was, and I found myself wanting to hear another one, not because it served a purpose, but because it made existence less heavy. He turned to the council. "We will vote, but first I want to share something. Humans have a saying, hope is contagious too. I didn't understand it until now. If we reject humanity, we reject hope, hope that we can be more than what we've always been." The vote took hours. The gallery watched in tense silence as council members deliberated. Some argued for strict quarantine, others for immediate integration. The chamber was evenly split. Then the prime consciousness, representing all hive minds in the galaxy, did something unprecedented. It split. Each of its 3 nodes voted differently. One voted for quarantine, maintaining tradition. One voted for integration, embracing change. And the third abstained, saying, "I vote for the right of individual nodes to choose for themselves whether they wish to experience human happiness." The chamber went silent,